to build the housing that we need in the city of Vancouver. This investment will be into co-op housing on the basis of a third, and a third on a social mix between low, medium, and high income. And this is similar to the process that Falls Creek South originally undertook, where we had a third, and a third in our mix. Our intention is to utilize city-owned land. The city holds its land in the Property Endowment Fund, and this land can be used, and with the fund we'll be able to construct the housing that we need. We estimate that we can build somewhere in the order of 2,000 units, accommodating 4,000 Vancouverites in the future. And this is just the starting place, because we welcome the involvement of the federal and provincial government. Ideally, we can leverage that $500 million up to $1.5 billion. And I think some of us heard today that Minister Eby has announced his plan, which included a $500 million allocation for housing, which would just work very nicely. Now, if we could just get the feds in, we'll be able to leverage what we really need. But the city can do it alone, but we shouldn't do alone. It really is incumbent on the senior levels of government to join together with us. This is a model that has been used previously by the city, both in Falls Creek South and in Champlain Heights, again going back to the 70s. The feds got out of the housing game, as many of you will know, in the 90s, and this is the perfect opportunity for them to get back in and help us build the housing that we need. So I'm going to invite a couple of my academic and professional colleagues to elaborate a little bit more, as we have been collaborating on this totally achievable and well thought through initiative. So first I'd like to ask Patrick Condon, professor at UBC in the School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture and the School of Urban Design. Thank you very much, and I'll answer questions afterward.
Thank you, Colleen. And I hope you pardon me for reading. I know it's not the best way to do it, but otherwise I will stumble over a lot of words rather than just a few. I am happy to support what is a practical and modest step on the road to affordable housing for everyone in the city. It's fitting that we are here on Falls Creek and at Hardwick Boulevard to talk about this. UBC professor and city councillor Walter Hardwick was instrumental in setting Vancouver on a path towards housing equity in the 1970s. Both here and at Champlain Heights, the principle he and other city leaders deeply believed in was made real. The principle was this: the well-off, the middle class, and the disadvantaged can and should be housed in the same neighborhoods, not in substandard housing in the least favorable parts of the city, but in beautiful buildings in the best part of town. Not without parks and playgrounds, but with the world's best parks and playgrounds. Not with substandard schools, but with beautiful schools that became the very beating heart of their community. I am so pleased to see one party trying to revive an almost lost Vancouver tradition, and a tradition that is even more desperately needed now than it was in the 1970s. This tradition based on the democratic principle that in our city, neighborhoods should accommodate the full spectrum of the people we need and want to call our city home: the disabled, the middle class, and the well-off together without distinction. This modest and eminently practical idea of a city-sponsored revolving fund for mixed-income, non-market housing has the potential to revive the spirit of Falls Creek South and to extend it citywide, to give the same gift to the next generation that the previous one gave to us. A gift not for us, but for our sons and daughters and for all of the workers who make this city run. I hope the voters will embrace this idea, and if they do, we all, collectively, can revive a world-famous Vancouver tradition, a tradition that may otherwise vanish forever. Thank you for this moment,
And now I'd like to ask Brian Palmquist to come forward.
Thanks. So I can't possibly match Patrick's eloquence. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here. I have the privilege of being the Affordable Housing Policy Chair for T.E.A.M. Like everybody in T.E.A.M, I'm a volunteer. We've been working on this for a long time. We've been working on it for a long time because T.E.A.M is a consultative party. We had a policy conference, we had follow-ups to that. We've engaged people much more expert than I in making sure that what we're proposing today is totally doable, works, and will continue, as has been suggested, to keep feeding affordable housing to this city. We could have done it quicker, I guess. We could have made wild promises. We could have just said, well, we'll let the market take care of it. But we knew we had to be positive and proactive and realistic for Vancouver, and I'm really proud. That's what we've done.
Thank you, Brian.
Next questions, Maureen.
Questions? Anybody?
So is $250,000 a unit enough?
We've analyzed together with the industry what the per unit cost and building cost would be, and the number of units that we've estimated is between 1,800 and 2,000 based on the current information through finance and real estate.
Yeah, how many, like have you worked out, how many are going to be more than one bedroom or?
We're still working out the fine-tuned details on it, but the broad brushstrokes of the number of units, the number of population, the number of sites available from the city have all been verified.
So what would you do with the Broadway plan if you were elected?
I'm going to rescind the Broadway plan. The Broadway plan is not in the best interests of Vancouverites. I should say that it, of course, makes sense to be having high-rise buildings around subway stops, but we're talking about 500 blocks and approximately 25% of the affordable rental housing in the city, and to bulldoze or steamroll that, I think is just a misleading and wrong approach to where we need to be going as a city.
Do you intend to put some of these co-ops or fair share in the West End?
The co-ops will be located where the city has property. The intention here is to go through the inventory of the Property Endowment Fund. There were 740 properties under the fund. 200 have already been moved over to the Vancouver Affordable Housing Endowment Fund, and many are small. But we are going through a process of exploring that inventory to determine the location and configurations of each of the co-ops.
Do you understand it to be spread out evenly? As Patrick says, you need to spread these out through neighborhoods. You can't concentrate them. Do you understand?
Absolutely. That's again, T.E.A.M is the voice for all neighborhoods, and anyone that has been paying attention knows that over the course of this term, I visited all of the 50 neighborhoods, asking the question: if we need to add 500 to 1,000 new homes in your neighborhood over the next decade, where are we going to put them? And what is the housing typology, the effect on mobility, the effect on commercial activity where people work and shop, the need for community amenities and green space in balance. And I think it is really that more nuanced approach to looking at our planning exercise that this city really needs, instead, as I say, this one-size-fits-all model that the current Vancouver plan and Broadway plan contemplate. Something that people may not know: the Property Endowment Fund came together in 1974 under the leadership of Art Phillips and the original team. And that endowment was created, collateralized by the diverse real estate holdings of the city. Many of those holdings were acquired by the city during the Depression, after the 1929 and into the 1930s, where many property owners defaulted on their taxes and the city took their land. So I just bring this to your attention because these are the kinds of locations that will be well suited to the kind of distributed co-op approach that we're discussing here.
Do you have to, are you intending to create a city-run entity to operate these, or will you be using nonprofits as we see, you know, the
This
various
is,
nonprofits?
we're still exploring exactly the configuration of the housing corporation, but there will be one that the city leads. And this is there is a precedent for this. Again, going back to the community land trusts in the city. I should point out that in 2012 I sat on the Mayor's Task Force for Housing Affordability, and that time also had examined in depth the land and opportunities and different kinds of structures for a city-owned land corporation.
You mentioned the referendum.
Well, I did want to point out that we're not going to do this unilaterally. Within 18 months of being elected with the team majority, we will take this to referendum, to the residents, to the electorate of Vancouver, because a referendum, unlike a plebiscite, is binding. And if we're going to borrow $500 million to do this, we want the buy-in of the people of Vancouver. I should also point out that this will be paid back through co-op leases and ultimately land rent over probably a 35-year amortization. So it's important to understand that where the money would come from and how it will be repaid. And the important thing is to recognize that the land will stay in the ownership of the city as a legacy for future generations.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
A few photos? Could you get some
Yeah, absolutely.